So, as you can see from the title, we're today in this kind of first in the series going to have a look at some initial tools for helping businesses get set up for kind of remote working, really, in terms of kind of collaboration and communication within their businesses. Just a little word about us. We're a full-service creative and marketing studio based in Northampton. We've been around for just over 4 years. We've just celebrated our 4th anniversary, and as you can see there, we've worked with a bunch of different clients all over Northamptonshire and the wider Nene Valley region as well. So we've been working in all kinds of different areas across websites, print, design, social media, and it's that kind of broad range of experience really that we've tried to bring to this kind of series of webinars, really, to try and give you guys hopefully some useful practical takeaways and advice that you can look at making use of yourself. Just as we click through, there's a few bits of our work there that you might have seen out and about, maybe with the Canoe 2 guys or the Logistics Forum in Northants here. So just to broadly outline what I wanted to go through today, obviously you guys will be keenly aware that, you know, as the lockdown continues for what looks like another 3 weeks at least, and potentially further on down the line from there, obviously a lot of businesses are kind of having to adjust to some new challenges, and some of those are having to shift a retail operation to, say, an online sales operation. Some businesses are having to start kind of an online sales operation or reaching people on social media for the first time. Some businesses, it's more a case of, you know, how can we equip our workers with the tools and the information that they need to, you know, meet the challenges of working from home and not all being around the same table. So, like I say, today we're going to kind of break everything down into 2 kind of broad groups, really. What the first set is going to be some tools and some systems that you guys can look at that will hopefully be useful for kind of communication, both between members of your team and keeping things moving along, and some methods for obviously making sure you're keeping in contact with your client base and potential customers as well. And then at the end, I've got some hopefully some useful tools that you guys can make use of for kind of collaborating in those teams and working and kind of keeping contact.
Can I just ask something, Ben?
Sure. Sorry, who's that speaking? I can't see at this end.
Oh, okay. It's Susan.
Hello, Susan. Yes, hello.
Hello. It seems to be a very small group that we have. Am I right? There's only 4 of us and yourself.
I can see 8.
Oh, okay. I can't see 8. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So as I've just admitted Amanda, who I think is just dialing in at the moment. But yeah, I've got 8 people connected at my end.
I just wondered whether it might be useful to find out, you know, to try and make it specific to the interests of the people that are on today. You know, because I think looking maybe people are sort of individuals rather than companies. I don't know. I can't see obviously who else.
Well, can I butt in? I'm an individual, but I also chair the Northamptonshire Heritage Forum. Right. So I sort of stand in for a very big group.
Okay.
Is it worth doing a sort of a hello, who everyone is?
Yeah, more than happy to spend a couple of minutes just doing a quick kind of round table if people are interested in doing that, yeah?
I think it would be helpful because then, I mean, especially in a small sort of situation like this, you know, to actually find out where people are coming from and then be able to pitch it, you know, directly to what they need.
Sure.
Would be helpful.
Sounds good.
I will certainly try and do my best. Yeah, no, well, do you perhaps want to kick off, Susan, and give us a quick introduction to kind of yourself?
Okay, yeah, I work with in the wellbeing sector.
Okay.
So I do have experience of working with websites and social media, but obviously there's always new things coming on. But it's one of the things I find with the people that I work with. It's really important that you find tools that they can actually, and I say actually use. It's the issue of it's like Hootsuite, for example. For some people it works really well, for some people it doesn't, and that's why I was interested to find out who was in the group, because there's so much out there, as you know. And it's really, you know, people want something that they can grab hold of, that they can really get stuck into and enjoy using.
Sure.
That's my interest.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's me.
Cool. I'm just looking down my list here. Gavin, you're the next one on the list at this end. If there's anything specific you wanted to kind of highlight?
Yeah, morning all. I'm the web officer for East Northamptonshire Council. Basically, I just want to, obviously Ben always provides good information on the latest trends. So that's what really I'm here today, really, just to see if what we're using at work is kind of the up-to-date software or tool that we should be using. So yeah.
Okay. Who's next on my list at this end? Seb?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my name's Seb Smith, and I run Higham Man and Van based in Higham Ferris, Northamptonshire.
Okay.
I got an invitation for this meeting because I went to a business forum in Higham Ferris a few months ago, got on their email list and such forth. I specialise in removals and sort of long distance single item collections all over the UK. I closed shop, if you like, 9 days ago, did my last removal then.
Okay.
I'm now full-time dad mode because obviously kids are off school. My main thing at the minute is being active on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, just trying to keep the business name around,
Sure.
just trying to get connections. So I'm quite interested in learning, tools and to be interested in what you're speaking about today.
Okay.
To go from there. That's one of my sons. So I'm quite new to all of this, but I'm very interested to listen to what you've got to say and to hear other bits and bobs.
Okay. Who is next on my list at this end that I can see? Jane, did you want to give us a quick
just a very quickie. I'm from Bendel Manor in Assington, so sort of, I don't know where you are, Ben, but anyway, it's in Northamptonshire. But I also chair the Northamptonshire Heritage Forum, and currently, because obviously everybody's closed, but we're very keen to keep all the members informed and doing things. So we have been having Zoom meetings, but we're also looking into other ways of contacting our members and dealing with online and doing various things online. So that's what I'm interested in.
Okay. And how about yourself, Charlene, if we pass to you briefly?
Hi guys, so my name's Charlene Bent. I'm a fashion stylist and journalist. I recently moved from London about a year and a half, 2 years ago, to Northamptonshire.
Okay.
I have a consultancy brand called Miss Campbell, where I style shoots for different publications, and also teach fashion workshops at Rushton Lakes.
Okay.
And I recently launched an online magazine for Northamptonshire called Style News. So I'm just keen to learn a little bit more about online marketing. I do have some experience, but I'm always open to connecting with other businesses in the area, learning more about what everybody else is doing, how we can support each other, and just and if there's anything new that I can learn about. Okay,
that's fine. And then I think finally the one person we didn't go to yet was Judy. Perhaps if you've got a second.
Hello, yeah, I'm Judy, and I run an arts organisation called One-to-One Development Trust, and we're based in the Peterborough area of the Nene Valley. I'm flying the flag for that area. I think most of you are nearer the Northampton side. We work a lot with Nenscape, and Destination Nene Valley as well, like Ben. And we do a lot of digital stuff. So I think my purpose really for coming today was I was quite keen to meet Ben because we've not met properly in real life. So I thought this would be a good opportunity. And also just to, out of interest, really see how other people that come to this forum are dealing with the situation out of interest. And because this is the first one of the webinars you're doing, Ben, I thought if I do one, I could recommend it then to other people in the area in my circle, really. That's my purpose of coming.
Okay, I mean, I think it's probably worth kind of stressing and clarifying. Obviously, we kind of designed this whole kind of series of webinars to be something that we would kind of break things down into kind of chunks over the next 8 weeks. And it certainly sounds like, even just from the kind of the round table just there for a second, that obviously I think some of the specific kind of challenges and queries and stuff that you guys are kind of discussing in terms of, the example, Seb, of you guys connecting and keeping the brand visible on social media, all of those kind of different requirements, I think are probably covered, if I'm completely honest, in much more detail in later kind of installments of this series than certainly today was kind of pitched at. Certainly some of those areas are ones that I think need kind of a little more kind of in-depth time on. It's certainly something I wouldn't want to kind of skip through in the space of kind of a 5-minute block in the name of trying to get through everything in one day. So I'm really hoping, kind of with that in mind, that obviously the kind of the slides that follow will be of some use to you guys today. I'll be honest, I'm a slightly apprehensive and nervous saying that now. Obviously, the kind of the purpose behind today's session was very much around giving you guys kind of a set of tools, essentially, that you could potentially go away and start exploring. And then I think some of those other areas that you guys have kind of raised there are certainly ones that I think would be worth kind of circling back to make sure that I can kind of capture those concerns and make sure that when we get to the relevant session, we can cover those in an appropriate detail and, you know, a level that is going to be useful for you guys. And then, yeah, hopefully that'll enable us to keep everything kind of fairly clear and clean, if that makes sense. Is that okay to everyone? I mean, I'm a little concerned that maybe some of you guys had got a slightly different expectation for today's specific session. Does that all kind of make sense, though?
That sounds good to me.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got
fine.
no expectations, so I'm happy to proceed.
That's fine, Ben.
Same
Absolutely
here.
fine.
Yeah.
Okay, like I say, I don't want you guys to feel like you know, that this is all kind of one way. The whole purpose of this, you know, from me, is to be able to lend as much support to you guys via this kind of series of webinars as we possibly can. So yeah, I think certainly when we get to the end, if that's all right, if there are, like I say, specific things that you guys would like me to kind of cover in subsequent sessions when we get to them on things like social media and other areas like that, then that might be a good opportunity to do so then, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyone that's been to these kind of sessions with me before knows I like to try and keep it as a bit of a kind of a grab bag, really, of a set of different kind of options in different areas that you guys can go and explore. Most of the time, all of these that I've included here are free for you to be able to go and start making use of today. Some of them kind of take a freemium model, and you end up, if you want to unlock extra functionality and stuff, then you can pay for pro accounts and stuff. But all of the things that I'm going to talk to you guys about today are free for you to be able to go ahead and start making use of. And kind of touch into one of the points that one of you made. Sorry, I didn't note it at the time who it was, but I've tried to kind of give some kind of different options in terms of complexity levels and stuff as well in a few areas. I know some people are a little more kind of tech savvy and happy to kind of dabble and experiment than others. So where possible, I've tried to keep these as kind of intuitive and as accessible for you guys as possible. So obviously the first set that we're going to run through are the kind of the communication tools. Obviously, while businesses run on good communication at the best of times, this has made things slightly more challenging of late, as is evidenced by today. Normally we'd be sat around a nice conference room in Thrapston with biscuits and coffee instead of all kind of dialing in remotely. But with that in mind, these first couple of slides that I've got in here, I've put together some options for you guys in terms of trying to keep in touch within teams and within customers, with your customers, I should say. So obviously the first one is the one that we are all hopefully fairly au fait with today. Zoom gives you a whole range of video and web conferencing features. And one of the things that it does that's really useful, for instance, is allow you to record the chats that you are having. So this webinar that we're recording today will be available for you guys to make use of as a video later if you wanted to come back to something. So there's some really useful features in there for you guys to be able to make use of, up to 100 people to begin with. I know, Jane, you said you've been holding some meetings within Zoom already. So that's definitely one that has seen a massive uptick over the last few weeks and months. Obviously, as you guys have probably come across, there are some pros and cons to it. Free to use and set up, hopefully very straightforward to use. I don't know if you guys had any issues getting in today, but generally very easy to make use of. Although you're probably aware there's some kind of time limitations on the free package. And depending how you guys, how interested you are in it, there has been a whole number of issues raised recently around some of the security protocols in place and stuff. So obviously anybody having particularly sensitive discussions would maybe want to think about something a little more secure for the meantime. But honestly, we found Zoom has been one that's been very quickly kind of adopted by a whole range of our client base at various different levels of kind of technical ability and stuff. So as an alternative to that, we've also been recommending Whereby to a few users. I don't know if anybody's come across Whereby at all. This is a really useful little video conferencing app that's available as a browser extension or a phone app. So you can either download the Whereby app on your app store and make use of it from there, or you can just go to whereby.com via your browser if you are in Firefox or Chrome, and just run it from there. You don't need to create an account to start making use of it. It's completely free, and all you do is go to the site, create a room. So Gavin, for instance, you might go in and set up a room at whereby.com/East Northants if you are hosting an internal staff meeting there, and all the users at the other end have to do is input that same URL at their end in the address bar or in the app, and they connect straight through without any sign up or account information being needed or anything at all. From a security point of view, it's a lot more secure than Zoom. They've been around a little longer and have got a slightly more robust security protocol in place, which is really useful as well. Pros, free and easy and very straightforward to set up and get started with. Gives you the ability to do some of the things that Zoom does as well in terms of recording and screen share. There are, however, some issues with the limit of concurrent users that you can attach to it. So where you can get 100 users into a Zoom call at any one time. The free level on Whereby only allows 10 for instance. But generally, unless you are looking to be running particularly complex kind of setups with it, with large groups of numbers, Whereby is a really nice kind of light touch option that you can use as an alternative to Zoom. Next one is one that's pitched at a slightly more kind of tech savvy audience. This is an app called Slack. I don't know if any of you guys have come across at all in your kind of day-to-day at all. Slack essentially operates to try and replace the function of email within companies. So rather than you have to wade through hundreds of emails at a time to find a particular thread or conversation, Slack operates kind of like a big, large-scale chat room for the whole company. You can organize conversations by kind of channel or keyword, and allow all of your kind of team members to kind of collaborate and add their own contribution to those discussions as you go. Some really useful features in terms of being able to store kind of files and stuff in the same place and share assets from a central location. Pros, again, free, very straightforward to set up and start making use of. It's based on a very similar kind of interface to things like WhatsApp and LinkedIn. It's very kind of social media orientated. So if you're kind of happy and comfortable in that kind of environment, then it's a really useful way of starting to organize lots of different kind of conversations at any one time. It integrates really well with a range of different other platforms and software. So you can email the system, for instance, and copy it into emails so that if you have to send stuff out externally, for instance, all of that can be recorded within the system as well. The cons to Slack, it's not quite as simple and straightforward to set up as other systems that are available out there. Obviously, it's not got the same level of kind of video support and stuff as some of the other options that we looked at. But what it does offer is more of a kind of a central repository, I suppose, of all of that communication all in one place. So whereas a video call, if you're not on it, you've probably missed it. If a conversation is going on within Slack, you can still come to that in your own time and make a contribution to that later. So from that perspective, it's a bit more of a platform that gets used kind of day to day and on an ongoing basis than for a specific kind of conversation. Next one is one I think I might have mentioned in my January workshop to anyone. This is more of a tool for communicating with your customers than it is for keeping in touch with members of staff. This is a platform called Talk. which you can find at tawk.to. And what it enables you to do, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see the detail in the 2 screenshots on the right-hand side there, is it offers live chat functionality on your website. So where you go on to, I don't know, say B&Q's website, and you can live chat with an agent at the other end to answer any questions that you've got. Talk enables you to set that functionality up on your own website for free and kind of straight out of the box, really. So, I mean, I've got clients with very little technical knowledge who are honestly not much more advanced than sending an email and getting around LinkedIn. And those guys have been able to start kind of making use of this system day to day in little or no time. So it's a really simple, really intuitive platform that offers the ability, as you say, to engage with your customers any time of the day or night. You know, I've got clients that are selling internationally that use this software, and they're taking inquiries from customers anytime between 8 AM and midnight, really, while customers are online and browsing the site from all over the world. It can deliver messages through to your mobile phone, so if you're not sat in front of your desktop, you can still make use of that functionality and engage with your customers. And what we find is it's a really good way of you guys driving up engagement and inquiries from the people that come to your website. We're finding quite often sometimes people don't want to spend the time kind of making a phone call or filling in an email and hoping for a reply. Certainly people are becoming more accustomed to being able to just click on a live chat button and engage with someone right there and then. And we're seeing across the board, especially in kind of clients that are selling products day to day, they're seeing big upticks in terms of the sales generated from their website as a result of being able to instantly answer questions, upsell their customers while they're talking to them, and make more of it. So if you guys are kind of looking to try and make more of your website traffic and try and drive up inquiries from the on-page visitors that are coming, then Talk's a really good way of doing it. It integrates with all kinds of different website platforms, so like WordPress, Magento, all kinds of e-commerce platforms. So whatever your site is running on at the moment, Talk's a really simple way of being able to integrate it and put it to use. The only downside, honestly, that I've come across with it up to now is at the moment there are some fairly limited analytics and reporting available within it. It's a really useful tool. It's been a great sales tool where we've implemented it. But the one thing we have found it lacking in is the analytics and the reporting, if we're brutally honest. But what we, from talking to the team at Talk, we understand there's a premium model coming soon where users will be able to kind of pay money to access some slightly better analytics and reporting. But again, on a completely free basis, it's something that you guys can be making use of potentially right away to start having a more meaningful conversation with website visitors right away.
Can I just ask a quick question? Sorry.
Go on, Charlene.
Thank you. Can I just ask a quick question, Ben, regarding Talk? How are you notified if a customer is trying to have a live chat with you?
You will get a notification either on your phone app if you've got it notified. If you've got it set up on your phone, you'll get a notification that pings up to say live chat, and you can log in and do it from there. If you are online and just kind of sat at your laptop again, if you log in on a separate tab, it will keep a tab open, and anytime something comes in again, you get a desktop notification that comes through to tell you. Honestly, it's a really irritating noise, so there's no way you'll miss it.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, honestly, it's something that takes about 30 minutes to set up from scratch and get integrated into your site. If you're running things like WordPress, it's all completely automated as well. So yeah, honestly, it's a really useful, really powerful little tool. Another one in terms of obviously making sure you are kind of keeping in touch with stakeholders and external platforms. We always tell people to be making the most of your email lists as much as possible. And what we're seeing from clients that are right now is that people are spending a lot more time in front of their computers. And as a result, we're seeing open rates and click-through rates on email campaigns, in some cases doubling and trebling on certain campaigns in certain sectors. So if you guys have got large kind of email lists or even kind of particularly small targeted email lists that you can be making use of, we're really encouraging people at the moment to start thinking about ways of integrating that into your mix and making more of that. MailChimp obviously is one of a million email platforms that are out there. Honestly, we've tried a bunch of them, and MailChimp, especially on a free level, is one that we tend to find is a pretty one-stop fits-all solution. You know, for most people, it offers some really powerful functionality on even the free level for people, and means that you guys can be kind of getting to work, getting in touch with your leads and consumers and stakeholders, I should say, without having to spend hours and hours putting together email campaigns and stuff like that to do so. Obviously, specifically with MailChimp, there's a free level up to a couple of thousand users. As I say, very easy to put to work and integrates with all of your kind of existing websites and existing services very easily. So you can kind of funnel all kinds of different sources into MailChimp to start growing and working with your email list. And as we say, it's one that in reality needs little to no technical knowledge to be able to start getting to work with, which is really useful. Honestly, the only kind of drawbacks we tend to find with it is on those free levels, there are limits to some of the functionality that's available. Some of the reporting gets unlocked on the pro levels. And again, some of the testing and kind of functionality options are slightly limited on the free levels. But otherwise, it's one that we say to people, yeah, it's definitely something, even if it's not specifically MailChimp, that right now, yeah, your email marketing is potentially an absolute goldmine day to day. Moving on briefly, and I've deliberately left this one to the end of this kind of communication section, Google Hangouts, because obviously it ties in quite nicely to some of the wider tools that are available to you guys to be making use of within Google. Obviously, Google Hangouts is a communication service where you can get involved with voice chats, video chats, as it says on the slide there, either one-to-one or in a group. I know a lot of people didn't really get into Google Plus at the time. I don't know by a show of hands if anybody out there is an avid Google Pluser. But yeah, it's one that, again, comes with a few unique advantages. Again, free and easy to set up and use. Links to all of the other kind of Google business services really nicely, and is cross-compatible across basically any device and handset you can care to throw at it, really. So in terms of being accessible, it's a really useful one for people. Not a great amount of analytics and reporting available. Bandwidth is occasionally an issue, although personally I haven't used it enough to be able to report that I've noticed stable bandwidth issues, but I know that some users have. And in terms of the video chat functionality that's built into it, it's not anywhere near as extensive or functional as Zoom or even Whereby. So whereas Zoom, you can add functions like the waiting room or recording video chats as they're going on, there isn't quite the same level of kind of functionality and video chat support within there. So it's one to think about, but as I mentioned, it tees us up quite nicely to looking at kind of the wider Google suite, which sometimes gets overlooked, but I think is a really useful set of tools to kind of make reference to in terms of trying to collaborate kind of internally and working remotely. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably signed up and been making use of kind of Google already in terms of maybe Gmail or Google Analytics, but obviously that kind of one passport gives you access to a whole range of different tools in terms of kind of Google Drive for your cloud storage needs, webmaster tools for making the most of your SEO on your website, and things like the Google My Business listing that, again, some of you have probably already kind of taken ownership of and started to make use of day to day. As a central repository, obviously, you guys probably already know Google Docs is really useful for being able to create and share docs within browsers. It's a great way of kind of centralizing all of your collaborative assets, potentially, if, say, you've got a marketing team all needing to make use of a central set of assets. And there's a whole bunch of options in there for things like sharing and kind of keeping track of revisions of documents and stuff in there. I don't know if you guys are using things like the Google Drive app as well on phones and stuff, but that's a really useful kind of app. It's a little more intuitive to use and make use of than things like Dropbox in an app format. So if you're not making use of it already, then again, while you're kind of working remotely and stuff, Google Drive is a pretty simple but honestly fairly powerful little tool to be making use of as well. Moving on to another kind of project management tool, and one that again I advocate on behalf of all the time. This is a platform called Asana. I don't know if that's something any of you guys have come across day to day before. Asana is a really useful project management tool that essentially enables you to create whole project plans in one place. You can break them down by kind of project type, assign tasks to individual users, kind of send notifications and track completions to make sure that projects stay on track. You can kind of collaborate and sign off on projects within there. It's a really useful, really powerful little centralized system. It's something that is completely free to be able to get into to start with. I always say to people, it's well worth kind of signing up and having a kick around of the trial for a couple of weeks, because it's something that once users kind of get using kind of day to day to start with, they can very quickly start to see how they can map out things like common processes. And when you've got projects coming through that follow a fairly repetitive process through to completion, then again you can kind of create automated kind of workflows through there and templates and stuff, so that every time a new project is logged on the books, all of the necessary steps and actions for all of the team members involved are assigned and notified. And obviously, if you've got potentially, I don't know, 5-10 people working on an individual project all remotely, it gives you a really useful way of keeping everybody kind of on track and starting to see, if there's pain points, if there's areas that are kind of lagging behind and impacting on other things, then Asana is a really useful, really powerful little tool to keep on track of that. It's something that comes again with kind of app versions for your phones and iPads and stuff. So again, it's something that you can be kind of making use of and working on remotely. You don't necessarily need to be sat in front of your laptop to be making use of. And it's something that again works in a very similar kind of way to LinkedIn in terms of its style and kind of layout and stuff. So if you guys are kind of au fait and happy working within that kind of environment, then again, Asana is a fairly natural kind of environment for you to work within potentially. So that's one, more than anything, if you are working on fairly complex groups or working in large groups, it's one that I definitely would recommend people kind of go away and maybe spend a little time watching the demo videos and stuff after this, and having a bit of a think about how you guys might be able to kind of integrate it into what you're doing day to day. A slightly different approach to a very similar problem is Trello. So Trello is another kind of project management tool that enables you to kind of visually break down project flows, project plans all into one place. So essentially you create a board of lists, and then you add cards to that list, to use the terminology of the app. So one of those cards might be for Ben to upload the slides after this presentation, for the sake of argument, and then when I've done that, I move that card along to its rightful place on the list. And again, it's a really useful kind of visual way of kind of keeping tasks on track. Offers a lot of the same kind of functionality as a platform like Asana or Freedcamp or Basecamp. There are multiple platforms out there that offer this kind of functionality. Trello's one that tends to be kind of quite often referred to as, the main kind of competitor of Asana. Those guys are kind of at it neck and neck most of the time. It's one that, again, completely free for you guys to set up and start making use of. I'm not sure quite how long they've been going for Trello, but it's one that comes with a really extensive kind of integration list in terms of the other platforms and services that it can integrate with. So if you need to bring in kind of other data sources and stuff into it, it does that really easily. And as you saw from the screenshot on the previous slide, it's all very kind of visual, bright, very easy to kind of see where things are at a glance. I'll be honest, personally, I'm not a big fan of the layout and the way Trello is structured. I prefer the environment of Asana and how that kind of approaches its front end. But again, some people prefer something a little more visual that they can just kind of drag cards along and make it very straightforward with. So again, it's one I try to give you guys kind of options to play with. So it might be one that you have a look at and see if it might be for you. The one thing to note with Trello, one thing that users do mention occasionally, is that there is kind of some limits and issues with the integration of emails to it. So whereas with Asana, for instance, you could email a specific project and put your contribution to the discussion via email, there are limits to the ways you can do that within Trello. So it's not quite as responsive in that regard. I don't know how many, a few of you guys mentioned things like social media and stuff as we were doing our round table. I know that can sometimes be a bit of an issue to kind of collaborate on and sometimes even kind of keep on top of when we've got multiple demands on our kind of time at the moment. Buffer is an app that we consistently recommend to users for getting started with social media management. I know Hootsuite was mentioned by someone. Was it you, Judy, that had mentioned Hootsuite? I can't remember now.
I use it.
Sorry, there we go. Yeah.
But I'm finding now that the tools that they have within social media themselves, I'm actually wondering about whether to desist. I've had an account for years, but they've now making it so easy to share directly from from your phone or wherever, all the tools they have. So that's of interest to me to hear your take on that, really, how things have moved on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I always found Hootsuite a little clunky, if I'm personally honest. I always found Buffer a little more intuitive, a little easier to get to grips with. And certainly one of our big things is, I can go into a client and say, I'll do this for you all day long. My personal ethos is I'd rather go in and kind of empower businesses to understand how it works and get them doing it themselves, because they're the ones ultimately that have got the real knowledge about their businesses to make the most of social media. So it's one that when I've gone in and trained people before, Buffer is always one that people find a little easier to get their heads around as well, in terms of kind of getting started and kind of keeping on top of it. It's a really useful little platform. Again, it runs via an app. You can do it from your phone, the same as Hootsuite does offer an app, or you can do it via the desktop version as well. Like I say, it all comes down to personal choice. There's so many kind of systems out there that can be doing the same thing. Like I say, personally, it's one that we use for our social stuff, and it's one that we've put into now. Got dozens of different clients that have been, come to us and said, how can we keep on top of it a bit more? And this is one that they've all kind of really responded to and stuck with. Some pros and cons to it. Free and easy to get set up with. I think you can connect up to 3 accounts on the free version. And there's a couple of limits on the numbers of kind of tweets and content bits that you can schedule up there. But it is compatible across a whole different bunch of platforms. So LinkedIn, personal profiles, pages, Facebook, personal and pages, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, all of those kind of popular platforms. And what it has got that's really useful is some quite good analysis on the back end, which was another thing that kind of drew us to it initially, where we were struggling a bit with finding a huge amount of usable information from the Hootsuite reporting. We actually found when we shifted to Buffer, that became a little easier and a little more extensive in terms of the information we were able to unlock. It's also got some really useful features in terms of being able to track, what particular pieces of content you're putting out into the world are especially popular and engaging, and will then recycle those at an appropriate time to maximize that engagement going forward. So there's some really nice bits of kind of intelligent kind of learning built into it. As I say, there are paid levels that you can check out with it as well, where you can add multiple dozens of different accounts and also have different user logins for it, which if you've got different members of the team collaborating on social media might be something that you want to have as well. Occasionally you'll have to relink accounts and stuff. The LinkedIn pages is the worst. Every now and then, every couple of months, all of the LinkedIn pages will disappear and you'll have to go back in and link your page back up, which is a bit of a pain. But yeah, like I say, it's one that everyone will have a slightly different take to. Personally, I really prefer it to Hootsuite. I think it's one that offers a little bit more bang for the buck and is a little bit easier to get on top of and make use of day to day as well. So That, I think, actually Buffer was the last one of these that the kind of the tools and stuff today that I was going to kind of talk to you guys about in terms of what comes next and kind of where to go from here. Obviously, right at the start I mentioned I'll be putting the slides up on my website this afternoon for you guys to make use of, and you can get hold of links and stuff to be able to go and explore some of these platforms for yourself and stuff. And I genuinely really recommend, if you've got kind of an hour or two over the next few weeks, to check out some of these platforms and see if some of them might be for you. You know, you might have solutions in place already that are delivering some of this functionality. It might be that potentially not, but hopefully these are all ones that you guys can be kind of jumping into fairly easily and seeing kind of, you know, within half an hour to an hour, oh, actually, this is going to be a really useful thing for me, or, oh, actually, maybe not. To try and kind of augment it a little bit, we've started a little podcast series as well that'll be going out into Apple Podcasts and Spotify just as soon as Apple Podcasts and Spotify get around to approving it. It's been sat there for 3 days. So what we're trying to do with that is kind of talk about some of these areas in a bit more of a wider kind of context. We'll be bringing in a few people to kind of chat with us and share their experiences and stuff as well. So again, if any of you guys are interested and want to have a chat with me about, you know, what your experiences have been this last few weeks, you know, if you want to kind of have a chat about, you know, the challenges you've been up against, and we can maybe find someone specifically, even if it's not necessarily us, that we can try and help with in that regard. But yeah, so we'll be trying to push as much kind of content out behind these kind of sessions as we can to try and kind of expand it and make it as usable as we can for you guys. Next Friday, we've got a session looking at kind of introduction to digital marketing, which is kind of going to have a look at, obviously, some of the wider kind of prevailing kind of trends and whatnot that's going on at the moment in 2020. And then obviously B, as a fairly sizable caveat to that, how some of that is being impacted and affected by kind of the current situation that we find ourselves in. Obviously, that's one that's fairly weighty potentially. So we split that into 2 weeks, one on the 24th and one the following Friday. But yeah, so that's next week's session, and again, I'll be sharing the link and stuff via socials and stuff if you guys wanted to kind of join us for that session as well. Obviously, I'll put all my contact details at the end of these slides as well, if anybody wanted to get in touch and ask anything specifically. But otherwise, at this point, was there anything specifically that anybody kind of wanted to mention or kind of bring up at this point?
I just want to ask one question, Ben.
Sure.
I was involved in a Zoom meeting with Forum the other night, and I wasn't hosting it. I couldn't hear a word, well, hardly hear a word that was set up. I can hear you perfectly well. I can hear everything on my phone always. What went wrong? Have you any idea?
Honestly, difficult to say without having been on it. It sounds like maybe if you're able to hear everyone kind of around the table today, okay, that maybe the specifically that day, whoever you were talking to was maybe having some issues at their end on the mic, perhaps.
Okay, I'll have to speak to them in that case to improve their mic.
Possibly. The level's been okay today when other people have been kind of contributing today.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah, absolutely fine. And when we have family meetings and all the other sort of stuff I've been involved in with Zoom, it's been fine. It's just this one.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
so
okay,
my suspicion would be potentially mic issues on the other end. Although again, like I say, if you're consistently having issues, then yeah, feel free to give me a shout, Jane. And if it's something I can try and replicate and help with, more than happy to.
Okay, thanks very much. That's great.
No worries.
So thanks.
Was there anybody else?
Just quickly, Ben, is there any way that you can sort of do like a summary connection with everybody involved today, whether that be a group email, just to list out the members involved and sort of their contact details, just to sort of
going to suggest the same thing.
Yeah, between people, because there may be, you know, I've heard from different people from different areas, but there may be people who, in the future, it may be beneficial for me to connect with them and vice versa. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Did you guys all get the link for today via Karen?
I did,
Charlene,
yeah.
I think I sent it to you direct, didn't I? So I
Yeah.
definitely got your email. What
Yeah.
I'll do is, if Karen's got all of your email addresses, and if everyone is happy and is kind of happy to give that consent, I'll get a list off of Karen and I'll circulate it this afternoon with a link to download the slides for everybody as well, if that's okay.
That'd be really good, yeah.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Cool.
Can I ask you a quick question about Zoom just before we go?
Sure.
Some of what we've been using Zoom a lot as well, but we're doing quite a lot of work with vulnerable young people at the moment.
Okay.
And the security issues sort of worry me on that platform quite a bit, really. So I was really interested that you suggested Whereby, which I've not heard of. I don't know that at all.
Yeah, so
So-
it used to be known as a peer. It got rebranded about 12 months ago.
Right. Do you think on the, because we pay for a Zoom license, do you think on the paid licenses Zoom are actually increasing their security now? Do you know much about that?
From what I've read, yes. I mean, I read an interview with the CEO of Zoom that was in one of the papers last weekend, and he was, in fairness, very honest and frank, and came out and said, well, look, we saw an opportunity and we knew this was going to be popular, so honestly, we ramped up our capabilities and capacity without thinking too much about security. And it was a bit of a mea culpa moment from him, in fairness. How quickly those changes are being implemented, honestly, I don't know. And if you're having, like I say, potentially sensitive conversations with vulnerable people, then it might be worth erring on the side of caution and maybe looking at something like Whereby that's perhaps got a little bit more robust of a security option, especially if I would imagine those kind of conversations are probably not happening between 100 users at a time either. So I would imagine the slightly lower user ceiling would help with that. But yeah, definitely one to think about as a possibility. If you're having those kind of conversations, then yeah, I would say always kind of err on the side of caution, to be honest.
Okay.
I think, can I just say something about Zoom, because I've had quite a fair bit to do with it over the last few weeks, actually.
Sure.
And one of the things that I've learned with it through talking with other people and who are then working with groups of people online is that they do offer really, really good tutorials, Zoom do, but of course there's loads of them. And perhaps one of the best ones, or the ones to watch or to look at, are the ones to do with being able to close your meeting when people are in, to stop anybody else joining. So in other words, if somebody's got the link and they decide they're going to come, what's the term they use, Ben? You'll know the term they use.
Oh, Zoom bombing, I've heard people referring to it a lot as.
Yeah, so you can basically, once you can close the door and that's it. It's just you and the person or the people that you're dealing with, and they're worth watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And things like having a meeting pin and password and stuff like we had for the session today is just another little extra step you can always take to kind of make yourself a little bit more kind of secure and insulated as well.
Yeah, we've been having pins and closing the door.
Yeah.
Same reason.
Closing the door is a good one. Yeah, because anybody can send the pin to anybody else because they can just forward the email. But
closing the door is good.
You've got control.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, was there anything else anybody wanted to ask or mention while we were here?
No, I think it was very useful. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I'm really glad you guys found it useful today, and genuinely thank you very much for joining us. I'll be honest, I woke up this morning, I wasn't sure how many people were going to come. It was a bit like Wayne's World. I promised myself if we did this webinar, people would come. So I'm really pleased you guys all made it out. Thank you very much.
Well, I didn't know what it was about. It wasn't terribly clear on Karen's email, but it would be, this is no criticism of you, but it would be helpful if there was some explanation from Karen about what the Zoom meeting was actually about. I thought it was going to be a group of people who were all involved in tourism having a chat. So, so this is a bit of a bonus, really.
Honestly, that's really useful to know, Susan, actually, because I'm speaking to Karen in about an hour from now. So if that's something that would be of use, then me and Karen will add another one on at some point during the next couple of weeks, and we can facilitate that if you'd like. Yeah, we're open to doing whatever.
I don't mind, but it was just kind of like, I wasn't quite sure, and then I was thinking, oh crikey, I think I'm in the wrong place here. But no, it was very useful. Thank you very much.
That's fine. Yeah, no. Well, we've got kind of a Q&A, ask us anything kind of session. I think it's number 4 in the schedule, or maybe number 5. I can't remember off the top of my head. So that might be quite useful useful for some of those kind of more informal discussions anyway. But yeah, if that's something that would be genuinely of use, then yeah, when I speak to Karen in a couple of hours, I'll mention it and we'll see if we can get another one added on. Yeah, that shouldn't be too much of a problem at all.
Well, I think it would be quite useful. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's I think as we're all stuck in our little rooms.
Definitely.
I do agree with you, Susan, because when Karen sent me the email, the title of it just sounded really compelling, but there was no information about it. So
No,
I just sort of figured, oh, well, it'll be just,
where am I here?
Yeah, for sort of half an hour to, like, you know, I knew that you'd do something good then, so I knew it'd be worthwhile joining anyway. But yeah, like you said, Susan, I didn't really know what to expect, but I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, again, what I'll do is as well, I will put together, again, it may well be that I perhaps haven't properly articulated it or sent quite enough detail through to Karen as well. So I'll go back and revisit that and see if there's any more kind of detail and context I can pop into those session introductions for Karen, and hopefully that might make it a little bit easier for you guys to identify all that session's for me. Maybe I can skip that one over the next few weeks.
Yeah, that'd be great. That would be really good. Thanks.
And just make sure you, make sure you update your email address, Ben, because we've got to get a few more people.
Yes, I will be sure to. I'll make sure that I get that sorted as well. So thanks for the heads up on that, whoever knows
no worries.
As well. Cool. Okay, great stuff. Well, I'm going to, at this point, I've lost my little mouse thing now. So, yeah, it's not going to let me stop the share at all. So I think I'll stop the video from that side. If that's all okay with you guys. Have a great weekend and afternoon, everybody. Thank you again very much for joining us. And
thank you, Ben.
No worries at all.
Nice to meet you.
Look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Really great to meet you guys. Take care, won't you?
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.
I think he's gone. Have you? You gone, Ben?
Yeah, I'm just on my way now. Take care, Jane.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot,
Bye.
Jane. Look after yourself.